Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to It's Rainmaking Time. This is Kim Greenhouse. It gives me great pleasure to welcome John Williams to the show today. He is the founder of Shadow Government Statistics, analysis behind and beyond government economic reporting. He has this electronic newsletter service that exposes and analyzes flaws in current U.S. government economic data and reporting, as well as in certain private sector numbers, and provides an assessment of underlying economic and financial conditions, net of financial, market, and political hype. He has a background as an economist. He talks about hyperinflation, about the real GDP, the deficit, the long-term liabilities on the obligations of our future of the United States of America, of the money supply, the consumer price index, unemployment. Today in the conversation, we're going to put together some of the things he said before, but this show is not only for people with heavy-duty financial background and expertise, but it is also for the layperson today so that you have a frame of reference to see and know clearly what's going on. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, welcome John Williams to It's Rainmaking Time. Good morning.
Good morning, Kim. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. I've listened to several of your interviews, most recently since the S&P downgrade of the U.S. dollar. Kindly explain the GDP for everybody and what constitutes the GDP from the traditional government statistics to how you're translating GDP.
Well, the gross domestic product, which is the basis for the GDP abbreviation, supposed to be the government's broadest measure of economic activity. I guess it is. It's probably the most meaningless of its economic measures. It's so heavily distorted with underlying assumptions and biases. It really is not worthy of the attention that it gets in the financial markets and the press when it's reported. But consider for a moment the number that they give you is an annualized quarter-to-quarter change in the level of economic activity adjusted for inflation. Their confidence interval around that, around their headline number that moves the markets, is basically plus or minus 3 percentage points, and that's about average growth. So most of the time, you don't know if the number really is a gain or a minus, and that's with the numbers as reported. It is one of the big problems with the way it's reported today is tied to the way it's deflated, the way inflation is applied to it, as I guess we'll be discussing. I'll contend that inflation is significantly understated due to changes in methodologies over time. And when you look to deflate the GDP, to put it into constant dollar terms, the lower the rate of inflation that you use, the lower the rate of inflation that you're dividing by, the stronger the inflation-adjusted growth rate is, and vice versa. So that if the inflation rate is being understated, then the real, which is a term the economists use for inflation-adjusted, the real GDP is overstated, and overstated significantly. I figure by minimally 3 percentage points. But beyond that, there are tremendous gimmicks and assumptions in it. For example, the government imputes income for individuals. If you have a banking account and the bank doesn't charge you interest or any fee, that's considered interest income to you, and they put that in there as interest income. They also calculate if you're a homeowner how much rent you'd pay yourself to rent your own house from yourself. That's in there in the income category, and if, of course, when you get in inflation, you'll find that how much you increase the payment of the rent to yourself for the house that you live in is a major component of the inflation measure, the CPI. It's just a nonsense number. Over the decades, they keep trying to improve it theoretically, and each time they change it, not only does it change the current history, but it restates economic history back to 1929. That never happened. It is, I think, a much better number in terms of getting an idea of what's happening to the economy is looking at the payroll employment numbers that the Bureau of Labor Statistics puts out on a monthly basis. There are some serious flaws with that, but over time it gets adjusted and you get an accurate measure of what's happening. And contrary to the all the press that the employment numbers have gotten, they don't lag the economy. They're coincident with the economy. The employment moves up and down as economic activity does. People got the impression it was lagging, and they make the case that it's lagging because the National Bureau of Economic Research, which is it's a private organization that in its earlier days helped to develop the GDP series, or did develop the GDP series, which is later used by the government. The government said we don't want to be in the process of calling whether or not we're in a recession. We'll leave that with you. So the National Bureau of Economic Research is the defining authority as to whether or not we have a recession. And last couple of times round, they've called the end of the recession extremely early, at least as far as I can see, and with the result that the employment picture continued to worsen after the official end of the recession. So people say it's a lagging indicator. Not so. It's coincident. Always has been, and in fact, in the old government economic series of the leading indicators, coincident and lagging indicators, the employment was always a coincident indicator. Employment right now, just to put that into perspective, and as reported, dropped, and my contention on the broad economy is that coming out of 2007 and the beginning of the breaking of this terrible systemic liquidity crisis that we're in, the economy plunged through 2008 into 2009, and then has been bottom bouncing for a period of time, and now is starting to head down again. You tend to see that in the employment numbers. The employment numbers never recovered. And in fact, the employment numbers today are below where they were 10 years ago. That's how severe the decline has been. And that's despite a 10% growth in the U.S. population. So we are right now still in the midst of the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. Yet if you look at the happy numbers that come out of the Bureau of Economic Analysis every quarter, and you look at the happy call, which I'll contend was largely political, on the end of the recession in June of 2009, you'd believe initially that the economy had fully recovered to the level it was before the recession started. Again, an indication of how poor quality these numbers are. Each year they go through a benchmark revision where they have much harder data, and almost invariably, along with the revisions there, you get lowered economic growth, and where a month or two ago it looked like the GDP had fully recovered the level it was before the recession, after the last downside revisions, that has not happened yet. And in fact, the recession is much steeper than had been previously indicated, and you'll continue to see that in future revisions. Eventually, the numbers will get more meaningful, but again, that GDP series is terribly skewed in terms of academically correct theories that are out of touch with reality and the real world as people experience it.
The Bureau of Economic Analysis, are they the ones that came up with the criteria for the GDP and for unemployment statistics?
No. Bureau of Economic Analysis is part of the Commerce Department. They handle the what they call the national income accounts, which were initially were developed by the National Bureau of Economic Research, a private concern. After World War II, the government started publishing the numbers